Look forward to presenting more about Sage Intacct. Today, our topic is to talk about job costing in Sage Intacct. Before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about what is Sage Intacct for those of you that are new to learning about this product. Sage Intacct is a best-in-class ERP. At its core, it handles accounts payable, general ledger, report writing, purchase orders, job costing, accounts receivable. But it also does bank feeds, has an open API, has a budgeting and planning module for extensive budgeting and planning, is cloud-based, has workflow approvals built into the system. You can track expense reports, dashboards, set up inventory and manage your inventory. Also allows for allocations that you can set up to automate. It can have a multi-currency function if you need it. Does intercompany transactions. You can create prepaid expense amortization schedules and has a fixed asset module. All as options within the Sage Intacct platform. So why is Sage Intacct construction? Well, Sage has 50,000 reasons for Sage Intacct for construction. It's customers like you that are on Sage that want a new cloud solution, or looking for a modern financial package, or customers like you that want software that can automate more tasks within the office. And Sage has the market share more than even the other category. Over all the other products in the market space, Sage has remained number one yet again last year. And they got this way by staying in touch with their customer base and what customers wanted. And what customers are wanting is a cloud solution. Sage Intacct is also recognized by finance leadership and experts. We are the first and only preferred provider by the AICPA. We are the only vendor that has earned this endorsement. We're also the undisputed leader in customer satisfaction, as evidence of our rating of 98% out of 100 by G2 Crowd, which is across over 2,000 customer reviews. And we're also the undisputed leader in innovation. We're recognized as a visionary by industry analysts like Gartner. Sage is also connecting with familiar partners that you've been working with, like TimberScan, with their new titanium product for Sage Intacct. Also Procore, allowing you to integrate your Procore project management solution with Sage Intacct, and Hyphen Solutions for the residential builder, and Workforce Go for payroll. But today we were here to talk about job costing and how does Sage Intacct job cost. So it job costs through our flexible work breakdown structure and our powerful dimension structure. Also the ability to access that data through drill downs, automate data delivery. We also support importing data as well as exporting cleanly to Excel with dashboard views and an easy report writer that I can do myself. Now, what does that work breakdown structure look like in Sage? Well, it's very familiar because it's very similar to the Sage 300 current structure. We start at the top with a project, and then underneath that, we have a cost code, or what we call a task, like concrete, and then beneath that, you can code to a category or a cost type. This is where we can begin to break out the cost into even further detail. Intacct even allows us to go to another level because of the parent-child relationship we can set up with any of the work breakdown structure phases along the way and break out something like, say, a labor between labor and maybe even burden. Now, how does this look when I look at job cost reports? Well, here's a sample of what a breakdown structure would look like in Intacct. We have a division such as concrete. Beneath that, we would have individual cost codes. Now, how that translates to our job cost reports, well, we can bring those cost codes into the job cost reports, allowing us to not only see what we've estimated in our actual costs, but even breaking out things like changes and being able to see the total new revised estimate. Now, being able to split information down by cost type allows us to get more granular in tracking those costs. Each of these cost types is going to be tied back to a cost code, but it's also tied to the general ledger, as you see here, ensuring that a user is, when they're coding to that cost type, is coding to the correct general ledger account, eliminating the need to have to enter that additional information and streamlining where these costs need to go. Now, where we all typically end up with reporting is in Excel. You know, whether we've got some basic reports we're pulling out of our current Sage or accounting software, a lot of times I hear users are still exporting that data out to Excel and manipulating that data. The goal with Sage Intacct is to be able to replace those Excel spreadsheets with dynamic dashboards and real-time reports that you can design in Sage Intacct. So let's take a look at Sage Intacct and how we can manage our job costs inside. Upon entering Sage Intacct, I do log in. That login will control what our user has access to. We're able to restrict users to from different areas of the company, but also if you are in a multi-company setup, be able to restrict users by individual company. Sage Intacct has a very unique structure that allows a user to be in what we call the top level, which is the consolidated level if you have multiple entities or companies. From the top level, you can enter in data to all your subsidiaries or individual entities, as well as run consolidated reports. But through the power of the dimensions, dimensions are tags, ways of sorting data. We can begin to sort our data by a particular entity. For example, I only want to see the GC division of the company. I can apply that filter, and suddenly my dashboard goes from a consolidated view of all those 6 entities to just focusing on one entity, allowing a user to quickly filter through information and display only what they want to see. Now I'm looking at a high-level financial dashboard right now, but as a user, I can customize this information, displaying the pertinent information that's important to me, whether it's cash balances, quick KPIs of what is going on in the company, or a more detailed view of a financial statement. But today we're focusing a lot more on the project side of the house and looking at how we job cost. And maybe that means looking at a dashboard in this way, where I am focused more on projects, whether it's looking at those projects in a chart-like view, seeing quick snapshots of which projects have the highest project margin or profit margin, as well as maybe looking at simple pieces of information that are quickly viewable in a graph output. Now, I may also want to see numbers and be able to see where that information is coming from. And I can layer in reports that I use frequently. So here I'm able to view all of my projects and view the summary of their financials in a simple column layout. Maybe I want to see more of a WIP type schedule of being able to see estimated profit, commitments that are still outstanding, and I can get that view as well. So depending on how I would like to see my information, I'm able to customize these screens to view just what I need to see. I still have these filters at the top that I could filter by a particular project. Maybe I want to filter by a project manager and see how they're doing, or a typical specific line of work that I may want to review. Using the dimensions that are built into the system, I can do that. Dimensions can be a project, dimensions can be a customer or a vendor, even a company or a department. I have all these options at my fingertips to sort this information. These dashboards are also date sensitive. I may keep them on the current date because I want to see exactly what's going on right now, but I also may want to look back and see what was happening a month ago or 3 months ago to be able to compare against what's currently going on with the system. But let's take a look at the project and the workflow for projects. I'm going to go into my general construction company, which actually I already have pulled up as a tab. And starting off, I'm now looking at everything that's related to this particular uh, company. Let's go take a look at the project setup. Now, in beginning to set up my project, Intacct gives me a couple of options for creating that project. I can go directly into my project screen and create a new project, but I can also choose to import that estimate along with the project all in one fell swoop. From my project estimate screen here, I can choose to import in the estimate. This will bring in not only the estimate, the budget amounts, but it will also set up the project for me. We'll go look at a project that's already set up. Starting with my project list here, I can sort and organize my list of projects, maybe by just a certain category or status of projects. We also can have parent-child relationships, whether I'm utilizing this to identify change orders, similar to how maybe you would use extras in Sage 300, or if this is a large project that has phases to it, I may want to connect them all together, but each phase have its own definitive project that I can track specific cost against that phase. I'm going to go take a look at the San Antonio project. When I come into the project screen, this is where I begin to capture basic project information, who the customer is there a parent project that this is related to. I can categorize my projects as well as determine if this project is started or not. And I can set up rules around what it can do when it's in certain stages. So if it's in an unstarted status, it could be that I can't post any cost to it or enter anything in against it. But when it's in different stages, that's when I can maybe enter in the budget. I can also define who the project manager is in sales contact, giving me additional information to be able to sort and filter my projects for or reports. My project summary tab can be very helpful. It's really a high-level summarization of costs grouped by those different cost categories. I can see material costs and labor costs, subcontracted costs. I can see budgeting numbers. Down further at the bottom, I can also see total purchase order commitments that are outstanding. So as my project winds down, it's a nice quick snapshot to tell, how many open commitments do I have out there that I need to make sure that I get closed up before this job is wrapped up. Moving over to my estimates, this is where we can store our budgets or estimates for a job. Now, Sage Intacct gives me the ability to have multiple estimates on a project, whether I imported it in that screen that we were looking at earlier, or I've come in here and loaded in a budget. By being able to have multiple estimates, I can really track the audit trail that budget goes through over the course of the project. I also can use these different budgets as almost like forecasts to be able to project what I think I'm going to be in the month of November or in the month of October, and then use these options to report on. Sage gives me different categories, and then I can build reports referencing a specific type of budget. I want to see budget projections in this column versus my revised budget that sits in this column to see many variances between the two. I think this is where you begin to gain so much, because a lot of times I hear users are doing these types of things, but they're having to do it out in Excel because they don't have the place to store this data inside their current system. Therefore, they're forced to go to Excel, which is just a snapshot in time versus an evolving budget that everybody has access to, that's in the same format that everybody can use. So let's go take a look at one of these budgets. From my project estimate screen, I'm going to have a status, if this is a budget that is active or not active. I also have this estimate type, and this is a list that you design yourself based on your current workflow in your company. It may start off that you have a projection, then it becomes an initial budget, then it becomes a current budget, and then a revised, and so on and so forth. We also can have forecasts and move current forecast to historical and be able to categorize these different types of budgets so that when we run reports, they can fall into the right category. If I have backup, maybe the Excel spreadsheet that I use to build this project estimate from, I could attach it here with this link, this paperclip tool. In this project information section, I can see again which project customer this is tied to, what the budget's date range runs through. Because if I am running reports and this project's not set to start to a certain date, I maybe don't want it to get picked up in a WIP report if the project hasn't even started yet. So looking at our estimate down here in the detail, you can see you've got your individual line items tied to your work breakdown structure, what the cost code is, what the cost type is. And then you can just plug in your total amount, but you also may want to utilize quantity and unit rate as well. Now, Sage has also given us some additional flexibility in the line items and being able to define workflow for each line item. Original budget listed here, but we also have some other options such as revision, forecast, pending and approved changes, as well as other. So as I have changes that occur on the budget, they can be logged here and noted as such. This is a pending change that eventually will become an approved change. Or maybe we want to label it as a revision. Or is it something that we're forecasting that's going to happen? All of these different workflows can then be dropped into separate columns on a report. So we can easily see how this estimate has evolved over the course of the project, from the original budget all the way through the current revised budget. There's places over here for a user to make notes about the project. Now, Sage recently added in an update an effective date. Because a lot of the reports are date driven, we may want to look at a report that's through a certain date. And there may be items that aren't going to be effective until later on in the project, and I don't want them pulling into the report. By utilizing the effective date, we can specify that this cost is not going to happen until a future month. I could pick this cost isn't going to happen until the end of next month. Then if I run a report through February, that cost is not going to be picked up. We also have some posting period information up here that we can use it. We can have it split, distributed evenly over the whole project. So when I run a report for 1 month and it's a 12-month project, it's only going to bring up 1/12 of the project cost. So there's a lot of flexibility with utilizing the dates on the project estimate as well as the workflow stages to give us a lot more detailed picture of the budget and where it is. Now, once this project estimate is in place, it can be saved. But if I wanted to do something like a forecast and sort of projecting where I think the project's going to be next month, I can duplicate this current budget, label this new budget a project forecast, and then make my changes. And now I have a new version of this budget that I can compare against prior budgets as well as actual cost. So Intacct gives us a lot of flexibility for designing and managing our project estimate. Now, where all this information starts to flow is into our reports. And in any system, you've got a series of pre-built job costs and financial reports, but we also have custom report writers in the system. And some reports that are in here that I want to show you are a couple. One is our cost overview report. And this report, I'm going to pick up that job we were just looking at. So now we're pulling in this report. We're seeing that original estimate. There's the column for estimated changes that all those revisions were falling into. We're seeing our total estimate, what we've got out there in commitments, those open purchase orders, actual cost, variance. And with some of these reports, depending on how they're designed, we can start to have it show us more detailed information. So if I want to, I could maybe say I want to include another column because I want to see the cost type. So I want to see that material labor detail. So now by adding that new column for cost type, it's almost like drilling down on an inquiry. I am expanding the details behind any of these cost codes to see that cost type breakdown. I could also choose to remove the cost code. I'm going to exclude this column. And now I'm seeing everything by those divisions and then broken down by those cost types. So I was able to do that all here by myself without having to go out and run another report. I could simply begin to expand this detail. And then once I've gotten the report to where I want, I can email it directly out of here, as well as export this out to Excel. And when I send it out to Excel, it's going to download my report and let me open it up in Excel. And the report comes through very cleanly, no reformatting necessary. Now, another report writer that I want to show us before we have to wrap up here and take some questions is the financial report writer, which allows us to really make changes very quickly on the fly. So if I go back to that dashboard, the financial dashboard we were looking at, and we're looking at our income statement here, perhaps we want to make a change and expand and see more detailed information. Well, just by drilling into the report, it sends me directly to the report writer where I can drill in and make changes. And maybe one of those changes I want to make is I want to see that revenue, not just in total, but I want to see it broken down by project. And I can do that by going into the rows and choosing to expand that information. And I want to expand it by one of those dimensions. And the dimension that I would like would be projects. And so I'm going to just expand these two line items by project. And now when I rerun this report, I'm suddenly seeing this report not broken down by, not summarized by just revenue, but broken out by those different projects. So Sage Intacct gives us a lot of power right at our fingertips of us being able to modify these forms, not having to hire a consultant to make these changes. I, as a user, can learn how to make modifications, and as you saw, make that modification just so quickly by drilling into a report and adding in that additional functionality. So with Sage Intacct, I'm going to be able to manage my projects on a very high level of seeing how they're affecting my income statement and balance sheet, managing the financials of the business. But I'm also going to be able to see that same level of detail on a project level. So whether I'm a project manager or CFO wanting to see what's going on the project or operation side of the business, I'm going to have that information at my fingertips. And not only is it going to tell me what I'm looking for, profitability, total cost, but I can drill down as well into detail and get to transactions and drill into individual transactions. Utilizing the work breakdown structure that we're all familiar with, we're going to be able to code our projects, build out budgets, revise our budgets, be able to compare our costs against our budget, and see all that data in real time and be able to drill down. So thank you for joining me today to have an overview of Sage Intacct and learn a little bit more about how we do job costing and estimating. I know we have a few minutes left, and I wanted to make sure I left some time for any questions that may have come up. So I'll go ahead and pause here to see what